The Polar Bear Expedition, also known as the American North Russia Expeditionary Force, was a military intervention by the United States in northern Russia during the Russian Civil War. The intervention was part of an Allied effort to prevent the Bolsheviks from establishing a foothold in the region and to support anti-communist forces in the area. The Expeditionary Force was made up of around 5,000 American soldiers and Marines, who were sent to Archangel, Russia, in August 1918. Their mission was to assist Russian forces in their fight against the Bolsheviks, but the intervention would ultimately end in failure. The American intervention in northern Russia was one of the more unusual episodes of the First World War. Unlike the other major Allied powers, the United States had no direct involvement in the Russian conflict prior to the Bolshevik Revolution. However, after the overthrow of the Tsar in March 1917, the United States became more involved in Russian affairs. President Woodrow Wilson saw the opportunity to promote his vision of a democratic and peaceful world order, and he sought to support the Russian provisional government. However, when the Bolsheviks seized power in October 1917 and established the Soviet Union, Wilson's hopes for a democratic Russia were dashed. In the summer of 1918, Wilson received a request from the British and French governments to send troops to northern Russia. The Allies believed that the Bolsheviks posed a threat to the security of Europe, and they sought to prevent the spread of communism. The United States initially sent a small contingent of troops to Archangel, a port city in northern Russia. However, as the situation deteriorated, the United States decided to increase its military presence in the region. They were unfamiliar with the Russian climate and terrain, and they had no experience fighting in the type of guerrilla warfare that characterized the Russian conflict. The soldiers were also poorly equipped and lacked sufficient supplies, making their mission all the more difficult. The American troops in Russia were faced with several challenges, including the difficulty of coordinating their efforts with the various anti-Bolshevik factions in the region. The White Russian forces, who were opposed to the Bolsheviks, were divided into several factions, each with its own agenda. The Americans also faced resistance from local peasants who were suspicious of their intentions. In addition, the Bolsheviks launched several offensives against the American forces, making it difficult for them to maintain a foothold in the region. Despite the challenges they faced, the American troops in Russia were able to establish a strong presence in Archangel and the surrounding area. They provided training and assistance to the anti-Bolshevik forces, and they also worked to establish law and order in the region. However, the situation in Russia continued to deteriorate, and the Allied powers began to question the wisdom of their intervention. The American intervention in northern Russia came to an end in the spring of 1919. The Wilson administration had come under increasing pressure to withdraw its troops from Russia, and there was little support for the intervention among the American public. In addition, the military situation in Russia had deteriorated to the point where the Allied powers could no longer maintain a foothold in the region. The last American troops left Russia in June 1919. The Polar Bear Expedition was a controversial episode in American military history. Many critics saw it as a misguided and unnecessary intervention in a foreign conflict, one that had little bearing on American national interests. Others saw it as a well-intentioned effort to promote democracy and freedom in a part of the world that was otherwise destined for communist domination. Regardless of one's opinion of the intervention, it is clear that the Polar Bear Expedition was a difficult and ultimately unsuccessful effort to influence